Alright, so character classes. Here we have quite a few awesome things in the class. Your race kind of determines your basic stuff, but your class really determines what you're about. For example, I mean, like a dwarf could be, you know, a super tough fighter or a super good healer. I mean, do whatever you want. The class really kind of is just, your race kind of determines what you look like and what you act like. Your class determines what you do. Yeah. Anyway, so classes we got the cleric, the archetypal healer of the group. The cleric is basically the heal bitch. You need a heal bitch. Without one, you just simply will not make it as a group. You will be relying on the heal surges, which are not what you want to be doing. Clerics are also pretty good at destroying necromancy stuff. They gain their power from divine. Divine is their power source. Power source is something worth mentioning real quick. Your power source is basically what makes you strong. Alright, if it's martial, it's yourself. The discipline that you put into working out every day, and so many battles you got under your belt. If it's divine, then just you pray every morning, every night. You pray for little things. You rely on things stronger than you, and you're cool. And then I think there's psionic. Basically, you rely on your mind being awesome. And I don't know what wizards have, but we will get there. I'm definitely am not a fan of too much magic in a group. But anyway, so the cleric is basically just your heal bitch. If you want to heal, you can do that. You can tech him out to be where he's up front and he can take some damage, or you can take him out to where he's behind and he's doing massive DPS, or you can take him out to just be perfect healer, and just heal everything. Anyway, next up, you gotta flip a little hard. Fighter, yes, my favorite, the fighter. Um, what is the fighter? If you love punching shit, and if you love just having a big ass weapon or a big ass shield, or anything to do with that, then the fighter is your classic guy that you're gonna want to go for. Fighters typically play the role of tanks or melee DPS. They're not too awful good at anything else, but they're the best at what they do. You will not find a better tank in the game. You will find occasionally a better DPS, but that DPS will probably lose to a fighter because the fighter's AC is so damn high that, he's going to be fine. AC is probably the most OP thing in the game. Nothing stops a blow better than having, high AC. Because even if an attack misses, a lot of times attacks that miss still do damage. But if an attack hits and it just is crushed by your AC, which is armor class, by the way, or armor check, one of those two. Anyway, but if it's stopped by your armor, it's just you're fine. Absolutely nothing happens to you. So it's one of the most OP things in the game to have a really high AC, and that's what tanks do. I am a DPS tank, however, though. So I wield a two-handed axe. I love it. It's awesome. And I'm a dwarf, and I have a huge beard, and it is the dream. But anyway, fighters typically tend to be your more casual players. You'll find they're either going to be super casual or super hardcore. I didn't talk about what clerics are like, but I'll get into clerics right after this. Anyway, fighters tend to also be the most bold of the group because, they're melee. Melee is what they do. It's the ins and outs of their job is to be up close and punch people. And that requires a certain deal of courage. So, with the fighter, you're going to end up getting pretty awesome HP, pretty awesome AC, pretty awesome DPS, all that good stuff. It's not really DPS, I guess it's DPT, damage per turn. But anyway, clerics tend to be the the law-abiding group, or member of the group. Like they follow orders really well, but they're not, not natural leaders or anything. They tend to be either fairly moderate or fairly hardcore. They're not really ever going to be super hardcore because they're the healer. They're not really in it for the action. Yeah. Anyway, next up we have the paladin. Paladin is like super durable. You're gonna get awesome AC out of this guy. But unlike the fighter who gets his power through martial prowess, the paladin gets his power through divinity. He prays and he fights. He's awesome. He's kind of like a knight almost. Um, yeah, he's got some cool class features. Ultimately, paladins are kind of all right. I don't really care for paladins too much, but they are cool because they are religious warriors, which is just a classic archetypal. People who play paladins either tend to go in favor of being really laid back players, like they'll just kind of sit back and let you do your thing, or they're just going to be complete and utter assholes about every little thing because their characters have to care about every little thing because they're just so damn religious, which has its ups and downs. Um, Next up, we have, I believe, the Ranger. Yes, the Ranger. Your classic archer. Rangers are actually the best at melee DPS. Maybe a barbarian's better, but he's better at different things. But if you're just going pure damage per second against massive groups of enemies, Ranger is your best melee DPS, and I don't know why. But it's also the best archer you're going to have. Rangers typically fight with two-handed weapons. They're going to be small, Legolas, and they are great at ranged combat, Legolas. And so, yeah, Rangers are cool in that if you just like bows, they're awesome. Their power source is martial. They practice all day and all night. They don't go to other people for their stuff. Typically, you'll find elves and halflings are rangers, and as far as characteristics go of a ranger player, you'll find them to either be super hardcore or high casual. And by high casual, I mean that they will often come up just one step below hardcore. They're really cool in that they're pretty dependable most of the time. The only problem with the Rangers, you will find that they are not the most bold players, and they will often roll perception checks, even when not called upon to do so. Next up, you have the Warlock. The other power source, and I was correct in my thinking, is arcane for wizards. Basically, they gain their power source through old-ass books and magic. Ta-da! Anyway, the Warlock is basically ranged DPS, all that they do. And they're also pretty creative in, you can do a lot of shit. When you are magical, it's not like in an RPG video game. This is one of the fun things about D&D, where it's not like in a video game where it's like, oh, I can teleport in battle, but I can't teleport through this wall to the next wall. No, you can do whatever the hell you want as long as your dungeon master says it's cool. And there's a lot of rituals that you can do if you're a magical player, warlocks and wizards. You can just do so much cool stuff. You can make walls talk. You can put magical eyes, make them float around. There's no limit to what you can do. It's so much fun. You're basically going to play God. However, you're going to be pretty soft. As a warlock, however, you'll be a little bit harder than a wizard, but you will not be anywhere near a fighter. Basically, yeah, you're just DPS. Yeah. Next up, my second favorite class, the Warlord. Warlord is basically a battle captain. It's like a fighter, but he can heal people. And he makes everybody better. He's just the archetypal leader of a group. He's so awesome, and is totally my second character, and just growing on me so hard. That's what he said. Anyway, warlords typically are going to be your strong-headed leaders. They will either be super hardcore or moderately casual. Um, there's kind of no such thing as a light hardcore warlord. Um, they're just awesome. You need a warlord if you don't have a healer or anything of the sort. Warlords are just fantastic. If you want, if you have three people who want to be fighters, one of them should step up and say, you know what, I want to be the warlord because we need some healing going on here. Um, anyway, so the warlord is typically going to be, high AC value, just keeping everybody together and making sure everybody's using the optimacy, is that a word? Anyway, running at optimum capacity to, they'll get the most health out of your people, and you will have the most attack bonuses out of people. Yeah. Anyway, next up, wizard. Don't really know what the difference is between a wizard and a warlock, other than wizards are typically less about doing damage spells and more about doing rituals, and they're a little bit softer. And by a little bit softer, I mean a lot softer. So I guess they're just even more focused towards ranged DPS. I guess warlocks are watered down. I probably should have read up on this before I went around talking about it. But anyway, there we have it for classes. This is kind of a brief, overview of the classes. Wizard players. Before I finish off here, wizard players tend to be either a super hardcore or moderate casual. Not that anybody really cares about that scale anymore. I don't know why I spread it out throughout the video. But anyway, kind of just your overview of what you will get in Player's Handbook 1 and just me talking about them. As far as the classes go, if you want a super balanced group, 1 or 2 fighters will do. You probably want 33% fighters in your group, rounding down, of course. You're going to want one ranged DPS guy, and you're going to want one leader. Leaders not necessarily being the leader of the group, but being the person that heals. So you're going to want a healer, 1 or 2 tanks, and 1 or 2 ranged DPSs. And as the group expands, of course, fill out the healer before you fill out anybody else. Anyway, yeah, super fun. But that's just how you, talk about some classes there. Next up, we're going to go more in depth about my character.